Welcome, everyone, to the L7C Podcast NBA Playoff Edition. Today, we are back recapping the craziest first round in NBA, not in NBA history, but definitely in L7C NBA history. We got the basketball aficionado, Mr. Evan Debo. How are you doing today, sir?
I'm doing good, Martin. I'm trying to sort out what has been pure and utter chaos for the last 2 weeks. We have a game 7 today that we thought might go the distance. But for the rest of the first round, man, how are you?
I'm good, man. Like you said, we thought this one was going to go the distance. There's been a lot of crazy stuff happening. So far, we are perfect on our awards picks from our last podcast.
That's about the only thing we've been perfect on based on the series predictions. Man,
that is true, because I know we had the who we think should win and who we thought who the voters are actually going to pick, and we have been perfect, and the only one left is MVP.
Joel Embiid.
Yeah, it's going to be Joel. It's going to be Joel. But Evan, like we've teased, this first round's been absolutely wild. Do we start with the game 7 because that's the only first round thing still going? How you want to start there?
Yeah, let's start there. So here in about another 2 hours from podcast recording, obviously listeners will know the result of this by that time. We have the Sacramento Kings, like the Beam, hosting a game 7 after taking the first 2. Warriors won the next 3. Sacramento would win on their on Golden State's home court, snapping I think an 11 or 12 game road losing streak there, and we have a game 7 here in a couple hours. We'll be interested to see. I mean, I think the tenor of it coming into this is, can Sacramento be the team we've seen them be all year, and kind of be resilient to the atmosphere, the presence, everything that comes with a game 7, or the defending champs going to be who we've seen them be for the last 7-8 years. It's going to be a great game, I think, Martin.
Yeah, like we said, this one, it had all the makings of a very long series, and these games, besides game 3 and game 5, 6, these games have all been close. Like a couple plays here and there, and they have different winners in games 1, 2, definitely game 4 where the Warriors put it out by 1. And in game 5, like, I personally thought it was going to go 7, but watching the series, when Golden State won game 5, I thought it was going to be over in game 6. Like, you were at home.
I mean, they had home court advantage.
Mm-hmm. I just didn't think the Kings would do what they did. And they did, and now we're at game 7 where, when we previewed this, the Warriors have just been terrible on the road, absolutely god-awful. Now if you're a Golden State fan, you're asking one of the worst road teams, if not the worst road team this year, to go into, like the Beam, and win a do-or-die game 7. That's hard for me to pick just because of their road history.
And I know you got to look at the NBA playoffs. To me, have always been you can't get. I mean, I think you can look at patterns and stuff like game to game in terms of rotations or changes, adjustments being made. And I know better than to overreact to what the most recent game was, especially when you see a blowout. I mean, the Kings went in there and just stomped Golden State, held them to under 100 points. They won by 19 in game 6 to force this game 7. Fox was great. How about Murray?
Yes.
Your wing rookie playing 45 minutes. 45 minutes. He had 15 points, 12 huge boards, 5 of those offensive rebounds, hit 4 threes. I mean, he was phenomenal in there. From the Warriors side of things, again, I think you got to be going in here. If you're getting nothing from Jordan Poole in this game, again, you don't like your odds. Martin, what about, so there's been a couple things stand out to me off the court in this series. So obviously we had yet another Draymond suspension, and that was when Joe Dumars came out. What was your reaction to that? Because this is the first time we've seen. I mean, I think I mean, we're Cavs fans. Like obviously we got that running history and stuff. I think most of the league, if you're not a Golden State Warriors supporter, says this dude is sketchy. He dances on the line all the time, puts officials in tough spots to make calls against him. Again, I don't think Sabonis was without fault by any means, but I don't think that's a national reaction to literally step. A lot of people called it a stomp. I mean, I looked at it as a step. I mean, step with the full intent of putting his weight down on Domantas Sabonis to get that suspension. And Joe Dumars came out and said, listen, like, based on the history here, based on the track record, everything else, repeat offender, that was the first time in the history of the league when it's come to suspensions, we've heard that phrase of being a repeat offender here. You've got that ticking time bomb heading into a game 7 on the road. I mean, we saw him, again, yelling profanity to the crowd on the bench and riling them up. That certainly didn't help his case. And this crowd's going to be hostile every time he touches the ball here coming up at 1 o'clock. But Martin, just from a historical perspective on that suspension, what was your reaction to that? I mean, this is precedent setting. It really is, when it comes to how the league is starting to look at suspensions with repeat offenders such as him and the Dylan Brooks of the world, those kinds of things, that when they're on their 5th or 6th or 7th chance and they're calling their feet on the carpet for punishment, they are now referencing past incidents.
Yeah, the repeat offender thing's the biggest thing for me as well, as someone whose professional life has been in like working in worlds that use the terms repeat offender a lot. So hearing that, it felt like a judge talking to someone who is back on their like 5th DUI or back on their like 5th possession of something, or it's their like 6th case. And it's like, you keep repeating offending, the punishment gets more severe until you don't get any more chances. Obviously, it won't get to a point where Draymond gets like kicked out of the league, but now for the rest of his career, as long as he wants to play, if he does something, they have to judge it now that they've judged this. Like, all right, what are they defining as like repeat? How many times do you have to do something before now it's like, all right, you're suspended? Obviously, Draymond's had a career. I mean, Dylan Brooks, for example, he's younger. He hasn't been in the league long enough. So how many more times does he have to do something before he's labeled a repeat offender? That's what I want to know. Is it only like if you do something 3 times, are you a repeat offender? Is it a history of like 4 years, 5 years?
What's the tiers?
I would think if you have 5 years, like if I'm trying to be fair, like 5 years.
I think it's tough there's so many different pieces to quantify. I mean, I think you're right to see how can we quantify it. Is it by years? Is it by incidents? Is it by ejections? Is it by, what are those tiers and stuff? But I mean, obviously you've got the poster child of all poster child in our lifetime, Draymond Green, to throw the book at. I mean, and we know Draymond's going to do this again, but I think it'll be interesting to see, dare I say, after, this series or just after the playoffs. I mean, Golden State has a great opportunity ahead of them to win this game and move on to yet another series here. But I don't think this could be, if we see Draymond do it again, dare I say, it happens on another team after this year, Martin.
Yeah,
there's a lot of financial implications here. There's a lot of cultural issues. You had Jordan Poole in the last game, shoved him aside when he tried to dap him up, fist bump him heading into a timeout, push Draymond aside. And yeah, I'd probably do the same still to the guy who punched me in the face in practice. I mean, there's a lot on the line at 1 o'clock this afternoon Eastern time.
Yeah, I do want to say actually, I guess because they are actually the 3:30 game. 1 o'clock game will be the Heat and the Knicks.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yes.
So
good correction. Sorry.
Yeah, but you're right. There's a lot on the line. We say it every time, like, oh, this in any sport is so and so's dynasty about to be over, yada yada. Obviously, the Warriors just came out and won the title last year. They had their 4th one, and now since the Last Dance has come out, everyone now uses that term as so and so's last dance, as so and so's last dance, as the Warriors' last dance. If they lose this game, I don't think Draymond's going to be on the team anymore. I know people are talking, again, anytime there's a free agent who's actually decent, they're like, oh, he's going to go to the Lakers, which, again, I don't know how they afford everyone. They can't. But I think I will go with I gotta stick true, man. I think I'm gonna go with the Kings. I think the Kings do it at home. I'm not confident on it. I'm like a 50.5 to 49.5.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not overwhelmed by where I'm going here, but I'm going to take the Kings at home too. I mean, home court matters.
Mhm.
If we get into the X's and O's side of things, I mean, what we've seen from De'Aaron Fox has been great. I mean, you're going to need some of those huge role players to step up. Trey Lyles, Terrence Davis. You're gonna need something out of Kevin Herter, who's been very underwhelming this entire series. But again, they threw it on Golden State with a 19-point win the other day, and that was with Sabonis only having 7 points in that game. We obviously know he does so much on the glass, and he can distribute the ball and stuff as well too. But you're going to need some big productions there. You're going to need, I don't know if you're getting 20 plus out of Malik Monk yet again, but off the bench. But I think they've got so much firepower, and the Warriors kind of seem to be somewhat in disarray. But as long as you're looking across there at number 30, that's a bad man who can absolutely shoot themselves into a game or back into a game. You might see the Kings up big here, and then the Warriors do one of those patented third quarter comebacks and batten down the hatches for the fourth quarter. So I'm going to go the Kings here for this one, but there's just so many interesting nuances. The game within the game, how Steve Kerr makes adjustments, how Mike Brown makes adjustments, the coach of the year. A guy who has written his resume on the defensive end, doing this with this outstanding offensive team has been amazing to see. But it's going to be a great day for basketball, Martin. At 3:30, of course. Yeah.
Yep. The key for Warriors, Jordan Poole, you got to do something, man. You got to do something. If you don't produce, it's
come with the stick meme. Do something.
Yeah, you just gotta do something. But we'll stay out west because the winner of this game already has their opponent picked. It is the Los Angeles Lakers, who, Evan, I did pick the Lakers to beat those Memphis Grizzlies, but I did not expect them to beat them the way that they did. That you want to talk about suspensions. There was a lot of controversy in this one too, in the form of Dylan Brooks, as people would say.
Yeah. So I think those who follow basketball are well aware if they haven't. So, Dylan Brooks has, kind of gotten that Draymond Light reputation about him for some quasi-dirty plays, for trash talking. Obviously, we knew going into the series, the trash talking with Shannon Sharp and then Shannon and T. Morant, going at it and stuff too. We knew we were going to have all the star power in the series on the sidelines. He had this famous quote about, "I don't respect anybody until they put 40 on me." And the Lakers in the closeout game beat the Grizzlies by 40. Like, you couldn't have scripted that better. Now, obviously, LeBron didn't individually do that on him, but Brooks was very underwhelming in this series. Yes. In terms of offensive output. But, again, I really worried. I think I did pick the Grizzlies, didn't I?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. But, again, with losing, some of the folks that they had, didn't have Luke Kennard in the closeout game. He hurt that shoulder in game 5, with some contact against LeBron, not having Steven Adams to set some hard screens for their guards. I mean, that was, being tough. And Anthony Davis was phenomenal throughout this entire series defensively. Martin, I think I just saw a stat this morning too. So the bigger piece here, I think, I would never have thought, if we rewound pre-trade deadline, that you would have the kind of depth that the Lakers had right now. I mean, you got to have some luck when you do trade swings like that. They had made some bad moves before. I still think they have to eventually figure out something with Rob Pelinka. Again, if he's going to stay in that role or not, or they're just going to keep him floating around the front office because he's Kobe's friend. But he did. I mean, again, he's handcuffed that team so much, but he really lucked out with this trade for Vanderbilt and Beasley and D'Lo. Martin, they had 6. So back that stat, they had 6 different players in the series in all 6 games lead their team in points. 6 different ones. Obviously, we remember the big Austin Reeves game He's been phenomenal. Again, I just can't say enough about what Anthony Davis has been able to do. D'Lo was really good in the last game, distributing the ball as well too. They were impressive. LeBron had a 20 rebound game at age 38 in this series. We saw Ja was hobbled there for a little bit, but came back and did drop a big game there. Heading back into trying to get the Grizzlies back into the series. But again, it was amazing to see the Lakers' depth kind of come to fruition like this.
Yeah. So you talked about the trade stuff, like how you can get lucky and you can't get lucky, things like that. The other thing that was a blessing in disguise, because you brought up Austin Reeves, was LeBron being hurt for that time when Austin was able to start and he was able to get that confidence up. Like that, in theory, was a big blessing in disguise for the Lakers, because he was not playing like he was until that LeBron injury where LeBron was out forever and Austin really got the spotlight. And now I'm even seeing some reports saying, because he's going to be a free agent, that every team's potentially going to want him and he's going to command close to $50 million. Austin Reeves, which again, more power to him because of the way he's been playing. But the thing with the Memphis Grizzlies, and this for Dylan Brooks and all that stuff, I didn't have a problem with anything he said about like LeBron and all that stuff. Sure, it's basketball. If you want to be the trash talker, that is perfectly fine. However,
that he ghosted after.
Yes, my problem was the ghosting. If you were going to be that person and you lose, because like it or not, and I know we've talked about this, you guys are professional athletes. You guys are quote unquote role models, heroes to these little kids. If you're to talk all that trash and then millions of kids are just going to see you not be accountable, that's not it. That's not it at all. You didn't show up when you lost. When you got beat by 40, you didn't even stay in the locker room and you left. Like, that's terrible. Like, that's something that I had a problem with. Like, if you're not about that life, don't do it. Just shut up and play. Like, because you're talking all that trash and then you leave. And then with Ja, obviously now, because the internet is undefeated, the original video of him saying, I'm fine.
I worry about the West, Martin.
Nope. And he got bounced the first round. That's bad. And then also, but he's like, I said it. I'll deal with it. All of that stuff. And they've also been riddled with a whole bunch of this stuff with Ja's personal life coming into play with the gun and all of that. But it was very underwhelming because at the end of the year last year, me and you were really talking about if Ja didn't get hurt, would they have beaten the Warriors in that series? And they could have been the next team up. And now it's like they were talking too much for not winning anything. So now it's a whole different outlook on them next year. Like, they're going to be good, but what are they going to do in the playoffs compared to last time we talked about them? This team almost took out the champs. They're up next.
Yeah, I mean, injuries definitely played a role here, I think, into this potentially getting to a game 7. Again, just that the Laker front court and depth. I mean, depth in particular. I mean, again, we go down the Grizzlies bench and what you got left is like Santi Aldama and Conchar and David Roddy, like, and you're looking across to, hey, the second unit for the Lakers has got, Dennis Schroeder, a proven veteran running around with stuff too. And, the rest of the bench gang that, hey, there's some players over there. Rui was huge in the first 3 games of this series. I think he had 20 plus in the first 2 games. 3 had 16. I mean, Rui, who they picked up earlier, just off the scrap heap from Washington before the trade line, was huge. Even winning Gabriel coming in last game, giving some big minutes and stuff too. I mean, that stuff matters. So, again, I think there's a lot of ways back to our previous series we just talked about. I think the Lakers, I still think, it's impressive for the Lakers to knock off in a 2-7, knock off the Grizz here. But, again, Martin, there's a pathway here. Again, say the Warriors obviously aren't our pick today, but say they win this game 7, Martin, I think they could walk back to the conference finals just with the firepower and speed they have potentially. I mean, and who knows after there? Obviously, a lot to be said about Denver and Phoenix too, as we'll transition over there. But there's a lot of lot of opportunity here for either Sacramento or Golden State. And again, I'm not trying to dog the Lakers too much. I still think, a competitive series with whoever they play, but I think those are easily the head and shoulders teams built for the playoffs, in that other round there. So we'll see after that game 7. Martin, anything else on Lakers Grizz before we go to Phoenix and the Clippers?
No, Lakers advanced, and also I think it was crazy that this was their first home playoff games in forever. So crowd got to
crowd was great. You had Jack out there, had tons of Lakers faithful. Crowd was great. It was fantastic to see Lakers playoffs again.
Yeah. So besides that, no, I mean, Lakers, congratulations, and now Memphis, they gotta go back to the drawing board and figure out what they're gonna do next year. We talked about, let's go to Denver and Minnesota. The overall number 1 seed in the West, the Denver Nuggets, helmed by 2-time MVP Jokic. This one went 5 games, Denver winning the first 3, and then Minnesota winning the 4th game, and then Denver closing out in 5. I know you and I talked about how 5 would be the max, the absolute max this would go, and it went 5. Evan, I remember you were very adamant about how that trade for Rudy Gobert was terrible, and this came to the playoffs, and it did not come to fruition for them.
Yeah, I mean, all in on your future to lose in the first round. And now, obviously, a lot of that has to do with seeding and stuff too. Of hey, you drew the worst possible team possible in the 1 seed, but I want to give. This has come up a couple places that there's been so much to discuss in other series going on right now that I don't think the Nuggets are getting their flowers right now. No. And part of that was earned by the Nuggets. They were a bad basketball team, who were kind of riding the coattails of how good they were the first, however many months of the season. And the last 5-6 weeks were just super underwhelming and just getting gashed defensively. And I mean, Joker was just a turnstile, on defense, anybody was blowing by him. It was bad, but so I don't know if it was just apathy or what, but I mean, they came and did what they set out and needed to do. I've been really impressed watching Nuggets basketball, particularly with what they've been able to get out of Aaron Gordon on both sides of the ball. It's especially on the offensive side too. I think that's helped with some of the load. Jamal Murray's making a really great turn for the better on the offensive side right now. For Minnesota again, I mean, it was just so tough. I mean, Ant did Ant things, had some big games in that series, but again, it's just a clunky. It just feels like it's a little New Orleans Pelican-ish at times, where you just got kind of like an island of misfit toys that hey, all these names register, the Mike Conleys, the Cats, the Goberts, but how does this fit? How does this gel? And I think you saw that in some of the results here. But back to Murray real quick. So game 5 and game 6 had 35 in game 5, 34 in game 6. Actually, in game 2 had 40. I mean, he was a flamethrower offensively, still dishing out. He dished 5 assists in every game this series. Minus the second game with 4 turnovers. I mean, kept the turnovers down. Under that for the rest of the series, he was phenomenal, Martin.
Oh yeah, he had something that he said, and now that they've moved on to the second round, and they've already started their second round as of Saturday the 29th. He said, how many times do I have to do this for you guys to actually know, I'm one of the best players in this league? And obviously we saw glimpses in the bubble where he was balling out, and he's obviously been hurt. And you and I have said that if Denver is fully healthy, they can win the NBA title. We've said that for almost 2 years, and now they are fully healthy right now. So this is their best shot.
I think they've got, and I think that, I mean, they are deeper than they've been in previous runs where things have kind of flamed out. Again, I mean, some of the folks that they picked up, with Caldwell Pope and Bruce Brown, again, and they've got depth that they don't even tap into on most nights too. I mean, Thomas Bryant was a great reserve big for the Lakers that they just picked up. Reggie Jackson as well. I mean, they've got depth to lean on here. If they're getting into some early foul trouble or anything else they haven't even had to tap into like they haven't had in years past. For the Wolves, yeah, again, I'm just not real sure what to do with them. I don't think they have a lot of depth. Again, it's kind of a clunky piece here, but, give Denver credit. They came in and gentlemen swept, Minnesota, sent them home early. And then, as of last night, taking on, the winner of our next series, Martin, which was the, Phoenix Suns dispatching the Clippers 4-1 in the opening series.
Yeah.
After the Clippers took game one, right?
Yep. Clippers won game one, 115-110. Kawhi had 38 points. Zubac had 15 rebounds, and and then game two.
We were on the high after game one. I mean, Russell Westbrook had that huge stop at the end.
Yep.
Threw it. I mean, he was a monster. Just, on both sides of the ball, getting offensive boards. He game-saving possession, one-on-one, straight up. He not only gets the game-winning block, but then takes it and chucks it back off the player and out of bounds, and they don't even get another shot. Yeah, off of Booker. Yeah.
And unfortunately, this series then got riddled with, after game two, it was just Kawhi Leonard's not going to play game three. Kawhi Leonard's not going to play game four. Kawhi Leonard's not going to play game five. And the series ended. And we're just sitting here like, are you freaking kidding me?
Paul George out all series.
Paul George is out all series. Paul George could come back next series if they make it next series. But there wasn't going to be a next series once Kawhi went out. And Evan, it's the same thing, man. Every year, ever since they blew that lead in the bubble, the 3-1 lead to Denver, what are we doing? He was hurt again. We've never had the full Clippers team in the playoffs. And as much as I rag on the Clippers, absolutely tear them to pieces, I do realize if they are fully healthy, they can do things. There's a reason that Tyler Lue is one of the top 3 coaches in the NBA, because most of the year he is coaching without his 2 best players in the Western Conference, and the Clippers get to the playoffs. Like, it's just ridiculous, man.
It is. You got to feel for that fan base. I mean, they leverage the farm to get those 2 dudes in there, and I mean, you get them in spurts. Like, one's healthy for 20 games and they're out, and then the other comes back maybe 5 games later after they play without both, and then he's good for 20 games and he's out. And they're great when they're in and playing, but again, it's the best team on paper, because at a certain point you got to play the games, and we haven't seen them since back to, was this 2018, 2019 when this team made the move, right?
Yep. They made it right after the Raptors championship.
Yes. So I mean, it's tough to see. I mean, because I think they've got some productive players with Zubac and Norman Powell, and again, I think they've got I think they've got some good players to put around those guys, but it's the same old same. Like, I just don't even know what you do with that. You have no assets. You can't just trade these guys. What does the market look like for a guy who can't play?
No, I'm 100% agree. The only thing that now they have to think of, what are they going to re-sign Russell Westbrook, because he's an unrestricted free agent. And this series, he just went 23-7-7. Like, he was absolutely bonkers. Like, he was keeping that team afloat.
I mean, he earned it. He earned it, Martin. I mean, I think he earned some kind of contract offer from them. It's whether or not he likes it or not. I think he's happier there. I think Russell has talked about, hey, he is happier being on the Clippers now than he has been in quite some time. So, but Martin, let's switch to Phoenix a little bit here. So again, this opening series was our first kind of run with, KD obviously sat out the end of the regular season, but our first run with what is the Phoenix Suns. What stood out to you in the series from the Suns side of things?
I would think the biggest thing is obviously with the NBA playoffs for the casual basketball fan to be reminded of someone who isn't pushed all by like ESPN and stuff like that. So with the Nuggets with like Jamal Murray, but in this case, obviously Devin Booker, people were reminded how good Devin Booker is in a team with one of the top 15 greatest players of all time. Now Kevin Durant, one of the top 5, 10 point guards of all time, Chris Paul. Devin Booker was nuclear. Games of 38, 45,
yep.
47. Again, that's why I love the playoffs for more the casual fans because they get reminded of people you and I see from October to June.
Yep. He was a bad man, particularly in that closeout game. He was 19-27 from the field, 4-7 from three. Dished out 10 assists to go along with 47 big ones. So, I mean, in a perfect world, this is what Foodie always thought or hoped he was going to have with Kyrie, right? Where it could be your turn, my turn. If I have to go full Slim Reaper, I will. But hey, I'm going to let the young kid cook, and I mean that he did. And two, I mean, it's just there's a lot of pieces here. I think just with again those two, and then you've got the old floor general Chris Paul, who's really taking a back seat on the shot selection side of things, coming in and distributing the ball. And, again, DeAndre Ayton being a very, very productive player. I think he had a really good series too, particularly, again, keeping the Clippers off the glass. He had, minus that first game they lost, I mean, he had at least 11 boards in the next 4 games. He is a size in there. Again, we'll see. I think at times he has some defensive lapses where you're just too big and too strong to let these guys, clip on you like this. But I think that's all mental. But he had a really great series as well. So I mean, they advanced played the Nuggets, and obviously they had game 1 last night. With just briefly on that, which the Nuggets won. Great fashion and really took it to Phoenix. But I mean, I expect that series to go really long. Martin, let's flip and let's go ahead and read the obituary and have the funeral service for if we go to the Eastern Conference, the Cleveland Cavaliers.
Yeah, so the Cavaliers lost this series. Yes, they lost the series in 5 games to the New York Knicks. We did talk about one. This was going to be the most entertaining series on paper, 4 versus 5, pretty evenly matched teams. I thought this was going to go 7 in Cleveland's favor. I think you said 6 in Cleveland's favor. We were both horribly wrong, and in terms of evenly matched, we were both horribly wrong. The Cavs only won game 2 and got gentlemen swept all the way through. And Evan, it was hard to watch, man. Like for the year to end for the Cavaliers, 50+ wins, which we said in the prediction they would. It was hard. Like it almost looked like we didn't stand a chance at all. Like we were never in anything.
I don't even know. I don't know where to start. Yes, it was incredibly, incredibly, incredibly tough to watch. And I mean, it just caught me off guard. I mean, I'll be honest. Like it just wasn't. There were so many different pieces to this. I felt so good after game 2. Game 1 was, hey, we were down most. We kept climbing back and we made it competitive. Donnie dropped 38 off the bat, and you're like, all right, we're gonna get this. We're gonna get this from Mitchell every single game. It's gonna be 30-some plus. This is the alpha we traded the farm for. Martin, game 2, he had 17. Game 3, he had 22. Game 4, he had 11.
That was the one. That was the one.
Game 5, he had 28. All playing close to 40 minutes a game. And this is way more about Donnie. I think so. This series went this way. So from the Knicks side, some of the stuff they were doing defensively and Cleveland's inability on offense, and a lot of this on bigger staff to not make adjustments. There was some polarizing pieces here where I think the Cavs just look like deer in the headlights, especially when he got to New York. And we've talked for years on this podcast about just that MSG crowd, whether it's regular season or postseason. I mean, they were out in full force, and I mean that was intimidating. That game 3 was one of the most painful games I've ever watched my Cavaliers play in a meaningful game. I mean, they were so bad. Garland and Mitchell couldn't hit anything. The tough part for the entire series. So a couple pieces that stood out. If you're asking me why the Cavs, what are the top like 3 or 4 things why the Cavs lost this series? First off was they got worked so bad on the glass by Mitchell Robinson.
Yes,
and
he killed him.
You thought, hey, we've got two huge, close to 7-foot dudes. I think Allen's technically 6'9", 6'10", but Mobley's every bit of it. I mean, we talk about all the time, hey, Mobley's, string bean, he'll get on wait till he gets weight on and stuff. But, whether it was long rebounds or what have you, Mitchell Robinson also rebounded to the guard position from arguably the biggest trade deadline pickup for any team since the Celtics picked up Derek White last year, was picking up Josh, oh gosh, help me.
Josh Hart.
Josh Hart, yes, sorry, Sunday morning blur. He was picking up Josh Hart, and that guy was huge in the series. The long rebounds, when they missed threes, and that was bouncing out to the key or bouncing out near the 3-point line. I mean, they were more aggressive, 50-50 balls. They were in better position. I mean, the Cavs, they just got worked. On the offensive side of the ball, how many times when we see Cleveland do these really cool sets where, like, you would set a pick and roll, do a dump at the foul line for one big, he would go, a big pass down to the paint to the other big for an easy dunk or layup. Every time the Cavs tried to throw the ball in, either from the guards, from pick and rolls or what have you, in, like, it was like all the sliders were up in 2K, and the Knicks were just deflecting and taking the ball or stripping out of Jarrett Allen's hand. Like, Jarrett couldn't hold on to anything in this series. It just was, and the intensity picks up, the defense picks up in the playoffs. We know these things. But I mean, the series really got boiled down to Garland and Mitchell having to force some shots they wouldn't normally force outside of the arc because they couldn't pass anything inside. And a lot of that, I think, is from a schematic standpoint from JB's perspective, where, hey, what kind of weak side actions are you working to get your big free or force? Again, I do think that the Knicks were just getting away with a lot, but we weren't helping ourselves either in terms of just some of those grabs and stuff. I mean, how many times are we wasting 10, 11 seconds into a shot clock waiting for that initial person to curl off of the pin down? Like, we couldn't get any separation. A lot of that's great defense, don't get me wrong, but like that's so like surface kindergarten level basketball that, like, what else are you doing with the other 3 dudes on the court that aren't involved in the play? From the pass waiting to get to the guy curling off the pin down, dude, what's going on backdoor? What's going on in the dunker spot? Like, we were a mess offensively, and it just caught me off guard. I mean, that game 3 was such a killer. I mean, when you lost home court, that was tough in game 1, and then in game 3 and 4, we just had no shot in New York, Martin. Darius Garland had that huge game 2, and we felt so good about it, and we're like, we're going to steal one of these. It's going to be good. And even up at the end, game 5, I'm like, listen, like, we're going to get something out of Mitchell, right? I mean, things have been so bad. We're at home. We're going to get something out of it. And I mean, they came out and just, laid an egg. We didn't crack 100 points the entire series.
No, they did not. The closest.
Jalen Brunson was, as advertised, was phenomenal. Best player on the floor in this entire series. I mean, he was automatic. There's so many times where I'm just watching, again, from a defensive standpoint, what are you doing in the first 8 seconds? I try to divide 24-second defensive stands into, like, the back of my head. Like, what are you doing for the first 8 seconds, the middle 8 seconds, and the last 8 seconds? I think my math's right on there.
You know what's crazy?
So, I mean,
the crazy thing about Brunson is obviously, like, from a team that we thought should have been in the playoffs, but just failed. The Mavs would be in a better spot if they would have re-signed him, and now seeing what he's doing in New York. But for me, the series I felt to me was over in game 3 when RJ Barrett started getting it going. From game 3 for the rest of the series, he was dropping 20 balls on us, and I was just like, well, now we got to worry about RJ. Can't just leave him wide open, and Brunson's getting whatever he wants. Mitchell Robinson's getting any rebound he wants. And the thing is, Julius Randle did not play good at all. At all.
Cavs did such a good job on Julius Randle. Like, if you walked in and told me some of the point total Randle was going to have in the series, and I still wouldn't have believed it. I'd be like, we're taking this game. I would say we're taking this series in 5. I mean, again, just Josh Hart, Brunson, and when Barrett started to pick up steam and rolling, like when the game got really physical and clunky and low scoring and stuff, that's when he was being so aggressive. Again, just he had a couple coast to coast pushes with and ones. His rebounding was huge as well too, especially when some of the plays got really, really gritty and bogged down on both sides of the ball, where some teams would be in some stretches offensively where they're not hitting the ocean with the beach ball. But again, their depth, Hartenstein was huge off the bench. And so was, Obi Toppin, when you saw Randle, either through injury or through, just not playing well coming, he was able to stretch the floor with some threes and stuff in the series too. Obviously, they missed Grimes for a little bit, but the Cavs just had nobody on the bench. Jetty came in and hit some shots. They tried to go to him in, games 1 and 2 for some defensive length a little bit. But again, it's Jalen Brunson. He's just way too good to be defended by Jerry Osmond. But that's where we're at. That's what we had. Again, it was such a tough series to watch. Hats off to the Knicks. They dogged us. Tibbs just absolutely wiped the floor with Jamie Bickerstaff schematically.
Yeah.
I think that was a huge piece of this too. And again, they just got outworked, and they were way more physical, and they will advance on to the second round.
Yeah, Cavs are going to have to. It's gut wrenching. It truly is, because the season that we had, for it to end in embarrassing fashion, to an end like that, was just, it was really hard to watch. It really was for me. And it's just like, I know there were stretches in the middle of the year. It's like, we're just having a bad stretch. That bad stretch can't happen like in the playoffs. And that's what I felt happened. And you just can't have that.
No, and the Cavs don't have a lot of pieces in the off seasons. They don't own the first round pick. And Karis LeVert was great in the series. If there was one bright spot, for as inconsistent as he's been throughout the year, Karis was great in this series. They made that switch to start him, after the first couple games there, and we thought things were going to be really helpful with him distributing, being a ball handler, more offense, and he held up. I'm glad we held on to him as opposed to getting a late 20s first round pick flyer on somebody in the draft. But because of that, pick owed to Indiana. We do not own a first round pick in the June draft, Martin. We do have a mid-level exception to use, I believe, and I think I forget what they call it technically. I think we got a lower tiered mid-level to use as well too. I think we got typically two, like one at 13.5, one at 4.5. Karis will have to be, to re-sign him, he'll have to be absorbed into some of that. Obviously, with his bird rights, we can go over to re-sign him. But, again, it's going to be tough trying to fill out the rest of this roster. But, a lot of work's got to get done on the offensive side of the ball, whether it's bringing in a really offensive-minded assistant or, there's been so many hot take calls. We got to let the dust settle if we're firing JB Bickerstaff. Like, let's get past the initial shock and the anger and disappointment right now. But that will all play itself out too. So a lot to be figured out from the Cavs side of things. It was a phenomenal regular season. Heartbreak there in those 5 games in the playoffs, Martin. But Martin, from one heartbreak to another, this podcast recording is one, like we talked a bit before in our preview before we went live, about just like where this is at in terms of, or where we find ourselves in the history of recording this. We've not quite seen a first round like this. I think with expectations and outcomes that went differently. Martin, the number 1 seed Milwaukee Bucks aren't advancing to the second round.
Yeah, and I also,
we thought things were for the Cavs.
It's worse for them, but I also think that makes it harder to be a Cavs fan, because now you're thinking, if you would have took care of business, you could have been in the Eastern Conference Finals, maybe.
Yeah. Maybe. Who knows? You
would have a better shot against the Heat than the Bucks.
Oh, for sure. Yeah. Oh, yeah, for sure. Yeah, there's no arguing there when you put it that way. So, obviously, Giannis got banged up in this series, Martin.
Mm-hmm.
But again, if we go back and we look at, so he only played in 3 games in the series. He missed 2 games. So that first game, April 16th, he had 6 points and only played 10 minutes. And it was just too little too late in the final two. We're going to have 26 and 38 in the closeout. But, I mean, what Jimmy Butler did in this series, man, I mean, he's like a myth. He's like a myth. He is like a legend you read about in the comic book, where it's like, yeah, this you watching the entire regular season. I mean, he's a productive player. He's arguably, a walking third-team All-NBA and maybe second-team All-Defense at this point in his career. Every year you can pencil him in for getting close to or being on those teams. And then just something flips in the playoffs where he's like, all right, you're getting the full Jimmy Butler experience. And Martin, man, did we get it. Game 135, they steal it on the road. He talked about heading in that series about, hey, we're like special forces getting dropped into enemy territory. We got to go take care of business. And they did. Game 2, they also took 25 points. Game 3, 30 points. But that game 4, Martin, one of the best playoff performances I'll ever see in my life. 56 points. The shots he was hitting, a lot of that just such bad Milwaukee coaching. I don't know if Budenholzer survived this. Your number 1 seed getting knocked out like this. They had enough talent without Giannis to at least make the series competitive if they weren't going to win it. Between Holiday and Lopez and Middleton, who looked more like Middleton pulled in this series. But that Butler game, man. Hey, I know you watched every bit of it. Walk me through what you thought.
The 50, it's kind of crazy too, because I don't know. Obviously, the 56.1 is obviously impressive because it's 56 points. But me personally, man, my favorite Butler one was game 5, the closeout. Him wanting the ball on that lob to send it to OT and him going at Drew Holiday. This is when they were down, by the way, when he told Drew Holiday.
He got fouled on that play, too.
Yeah, it should have been an and one. The game should have been over there, but I get it. And he was telling Holiday, like, I own you pretty much while they were still losing. And then they come back and win that game. And that's a game that Giannis played. And he had 4, and Giannis had like 38 and 20. But the 56-point game, like you said, Evan, it's so weird.
No Oladipo, no Hero.
Yep, because Oladipo, they both got hurt relatively. They had no business winning the series. Like, if you look at it from pen to paper, you go the teams 1 through 15, and you put Jimmy, like, the Bucks had 10 of the best 11 players in this series besides Jimmy Butler. And then it's like,
easily,
he just does this in the playoffs. It's so weird because you never, no disrespect, you never say, oh, Jimmy Butler's the best player in basketball. He has a conversation with the best player in basketball. Never. But sometimes when it gets to the playoffs, you have the conversation is Jimmy Butler one of the greatest playoff performers of all time? It is a weird switch. And I was watching that and every shot go in. I was like, this is unbelievable. And the fact is they needed every 56 point because they only won that game by 5 points.
Martin, I'm going to tie the last 2 series together here. I had a bad taste in my mouth when it happened.
Mm-hmm.
I had a lot of questions to be at, or there were a lot of questions I had that I didn't have answers for. I blame a lot of this on the coach's mismanagement of minutes, thinking they're doing the right thing. Kevin Love had 15 and 12 in the closeout game, Martin. 15 points, 12 rebounds. And the Cavs gave him away for free.
Yeah, for a box of cookies. If that.
They didn't even, Martin, we didn't even get, I don't know what the best cookie joint is in South Beach, but we didn't even get those. I mean, I've loved how aggressive Kobe Altman's been with getting Donovan Mitchell and stealing Jared Allen and the James Harden deal and all the other pieces. But you let Kevin Love go for nothing. You had no backup options for anything. Got darn bad. He was
No.
he was huge. The Heat were dying back, again, just first for half the time of their guys, but whether it was Gabe Vincent, whether it was Duncan Robinson getting resuscitated and life back in him. I mean, those players stepped up, and whether it's just law of averages and checking with good shooters that those guys hit what they need to hit. But I mean, this series obviously doesn't happen without Eric Spoelstra, and from a coaching side of things. I mean, Mike Budenholzer they really wanted to fire him. I think in that bubble year for sure. Obviously, they have a title under their belt. I love how Giannis has handled the series. The season's not a failure. I mean, it's a team failure. For him, it's not a failure. Again, you get injured and stuff happens. And we talked about the Jordan comparisons with every year Jordan didn't win the title early on. That those were failures, because I don't think so. So I mean, again, he's a great face of the league, as we know. He's just so measured. He's early on, wacky, all those types of things. But I mean, I really don't know how Mike Budenholzer survived this, Martin. I don't. What Eric Spoelstra did to him was like, I mean, it was like, what's my favorite one? Is it 2000's Backlash from Stone Cold comeback in the steel chair against Triple H and Triple H and Vince McMahon, and chair shot after chair shot after chair shot. That was fun in this series, man. Again, like I think there was a report of either one of the assistants or Spo had said, "Why didn't he call a timeout at the end there?" I mean, like it was just such bad coaching on so many different levels. So I mean, again, this was the most. Say what you want about the Cavs, they were expected to win that. The most shocking series in the entire.
With Budenholzer, because now this stuff's come to light. I personally don't know if I can't speak from. I don't know if his head was fully in the game past Game 4, because for people, if you didn't read or catch the news, Budenholzer's brother died in a car accident before Game 4.
That's very fair.
So
that's very fair.
So me as a GM or an owner, I honestly would have been like, hey, man, I don't think you're in the right mental state to coach these games. And no one would blame you. Your brother just died.
Yeah.
I feel like that's when ownership should have stepped in and said, we have great assistant coaches. At least take off Game 4.
And they do.
At least take off Game 4. Like, if you lost, they did lose Game 4. Yeah, if you lost Game 4, that was the 56th game, you're not eliminated. At least take that. Take your time to grieve. And then come back Game 5 if necessary, because there's more to this life than basketball. I think that's an ownership fault. They should have stepped in there.
Meanwhile, ownership, Mark Lazary in particular, is too busy trying to get the Brinks truck to his house, which he did in the last couple of weeks, finalizing a sale of his monster stake as essentially a co-owner to Jimmy Haslam, the Browns owner.
Oh yeah, joy to the world. Joy to the world, man.
Joy to the world.
Gosh, freaking Haslam just want to take over everything. But neither here nor there. There's two other series, Evan, who these two teams will be playing against each other. I was wrong. I didn't think there'd be a sweep in this playoffs. I thought everyone would at least get one. Philly took care of business, man. 4-0 the Nets.
I thought there's a lot. So the big takeaway from the series, not only did they do that, I thought, you'd at least get one if you're Brooklyn, just with, how good some of their depth's been, how scrappy they've been. But yeah, I mean, they took care of business, but the biggest piece taken away is this, we saw them miss a couple games as kind of billed to us as a game-to-game thing, but this is a much larger problem heading into the next series, Martin. Joel Embiid's knee.
Yeah.
Not good.
No, and we've talked about Kawhi with his injuries, and Joel has not missed as many games as Kawhi, don't get it wrong.
No.
But he is also someone who has had injury problems these past couple of years. And they happen at the worst times. And here we are in the playoffs where you're about to win MVP and you're potentially going to be out a couple games against which spoiler alert, the reigning Eastern Conference champions, the Boston Celtics, who took care of business of Atlanta. And you're not going to be able to beat Boston if you're not fully healthy. But then again, what do I know? This playoffs have been crazy.
Yeah, who knows what any of us know at this point. That's a great way to say it. Martin, I think James, in this series with the Sixers and Nets, I think James Harden did James Harden things, particularly the first game, closeout game. Only 8 points in game 2 in 38 minutes, awful shooting, 3 of 13. Still got a 7 assists in. But to me, the player that really, obviously, Tyrese Maxey, again, huge. Like game 2 at 33 points. Followed that up in game 3 with a 25.1. But the one that at times he disappears on the court and we're like, yeah, we know you're probably going to get double-digit scoring and you're just kind of a good wing defender. But I don't think there's enough love in this series for what Tobias Harris did, picking up some of the load here. So he had 20 in 3 of the 4 games on really efficient shooting, across the board. Rebounded the ball real well in the absence of Embiid. He had 2 games with 12 boards apiece. Only 2 turnovers himself in all 4 games. Martin, I thought he was really, really huge. And then, again, their bench depth, that McDaniels pickup, D'Anthony Melton, George Niang came in, hit some threes and some spots. Again, I thought there was just a good, well-rounded approach here. And that, again, I was surprised that the Nets weren't able to do more in the series, especially without Embiid in there. But this was our one surprising sweep for sure.
I think
Evan, they will advance. Yeah.
I think with Tobias, it's hard for especially the Philly fans to get excited about him or give him praise because you see what Jimmy Butler's doing every playoffs.
Jimmy Butler.
And you realize that you guys made the choice to keep Tobias over Jimmy. And Tobias is a fine player, but the playoff Jimmy, if they would have had Jimmy Butler, if they would have switched that around, I think Philly would have at least been in one NBA Finals, let alone have won a title.
I think so too. I think so too.
That's
Martin. Let's look to our last series of the first round. So we have the Celtics and the Hawks. Sorry, this Apple Watch is really upset that the Hawks lost, but it picks me up every once in a while. But I think for me, as I was watching the series, we all expected Boston to win, but it kind of got dragged out more than we thought it was going to. Again, the Hawks were frisky, dare I say, at the end. Even in the last game, Trae Young had a much better late part of the series than he did starting off those first 2 games in Boston. He was 5 of 18 in game 1, 9 of 22 in game 2, and then he had at least 30 points in the front 4 games. He was frisky. You had that first game in Atlanta where everybody was nailing threes. They had to play a game without Murray for, shoulder checking the ref there. But, Boston did as we thought Boston would do with the 2-headed monster of Brown and Tatum. And, again, getting enough from that great support team with Derek White and Marcus Smart. Horford, again, they've been there, done that. They're proven, and they advanced. And again, I was surprised though that the Hawks were able to take 2 games to stretch us out a little bit.
Yeah, I was surprised they got 2. I thought the max they would get is 1 on a Trae Young big game, which that was the game 5, and they got 2. Congratulations to them. I don't know. There was obviously talks of potentially trading Trae Young in the offseason. We'll see what comes of that. I think the funniest thing in this series is that even the Hawk faithful did not think they were going to win as they double booked game 6 in Janet Jackson's concert. So that was hilarious. But no, Boston is just too much. It was too much for Atlanta to handle. And now they have their date with Philadelphia.
I think as we talk about potential opportunities for stuff, I think that the series got extended partly because of
Quinn Snyder's coaching abilities.
Mm-hmm.
I think that definitely helped. Did you see the tweet from Trey's dad?
I did not.
I'm paraphrasing here. I'm paraphrasing here, but essentially it said Quinn Snyder is the best thing to happen to my son since he's been in Atlanta, or is the best coach he's had since Atlanta, something along those lines. And I mean, Quinn, for what he did in those Utah years, with the Gobert and Mitchell friction, those kinds of things. I mean, he is a phenomenal coach. So one thing for Quinn Snyder, I think here too, is let's say some crazy stuff happens here. Let's say, and I don't necessarily think these things are going to happen. I feel JB Bickerstaff safer, but let's say JB Bickerstaff, who just got an extension, is gone. Let's say Mike Budenholzer, gone. Let's go. I'm trying to think what other coaches might be on the proverbial hot seat with great opportunity. Let's say Jason Kidd's gone. So you've got those three openings, and you had Quinn Snyder getting in early with the Hawks. Say he hadn't. Are you picking yourself if you're Quinn Snyder and you could be the head coach of the Milwaukee Bucks and Cleveland Cavaliers or even Luka?
I think you do. I think you are, but it's one of those hindsight 2020 because you obviously did not think that those potential jobs would be open.
That's true. Maybe with these, I think the Mavs thing, again with Kidd, I think we could. I mean, who knows on that? Again, he dogged his owner, he dogged his GM, making him sit players. That was a try to save my job kind of thing. Obviously, they got fined big money for essentially throwing the rest of the season to keep their draft pick. I love full scorched earth NBA though when it comes to whether it's the Draymond piece with laying down the law or saying, hey, you guys compromise the integrity of the game by not playing key players. Like, I love this new. It feels like an attitude there of sorts for the NBA executive in Secaucus, New Jersey, just laying down the law of, hey, listen, this stuff's wrong. We're going to hold you accountable for it. Player, coach, or owner catering, like we're going to call it what it is. Compromise the integrity here, but I think that is a win for Atlanta to get that guy. I mean, with his potential opening, they could pop up, in there. But no, he was a huge reason of why they won 2 games. So,
yeah. So real quick, since we are up against it time-wise in that hour mark, we're gonna give quick predictions on the second round, and then we'll be back to see if we were right or not. We've already gave our predictions. We both think the Kings are going to win Game 7 today. So first, Evan, we're just going to be bouncing around. Western Conference, Denver Nuggets already lead the Phoenix Suns 1-0. Who do you think wins that series?
Oh, man.
It's tough. I mean, this is tough. I think both series are going to go long, at least 6 games in the West. Man, this is tough. I'm going to say, as much as I want to say the Suns bounce back, they've got the baddest dude on the planet, and arguably 2 baddest dudes on the planet in the West with Flipper and with KD. That I think Denver's got way more depth, and I think Phoenix is still a little shaky. Only having Kevin Durant for like 2 months of practice. I think Denver finds a way to pull it out. I'll stay in 7 though.
I would. I feel like they get back on track. I don't disagree. I wouldn't be mad about your thing, but I think Phoenix will win in 7. And we're still waiting the Western Conference semi. So we'll jump to the East. Starting at 1 p.m. today, the New York Knicks. Oh, that hurts. Going against the Miami Heat. Series tied 0-0 right now. Who do you think wins the series?
Man, I think this is going to be a good one just based on what we've seen out of the Knicks and giving them their props. I mean, I think, and I just don't know. I mean, it'll be interesting to see if Robinson has as much size impact on Bam as he did against the Cavs front court. I mean, outside of Bam, what kind of depth do you have if you're Miami besides Kevin Love, the backup too? I mean, I think Robinson have his way with Kevin. I think Kevin
can hold his own probably a little bit more. But I'm gonna take the South Beach Jimmy Butlers.
Okay.
I think the series goes long.
I'm going to take the Knicks in 6. I think Jalen Brunson is just going to go crazy again. But if playoff Jimmy knocks them off, the legend continues once again. Now, I think for me, because of the history between these teams throughout NBA history and of recent, Boston and Philly. Who do you got in this?
I think this series
was a 7-game series in a coin flip.
If Embiid was fully healthy, but since he's not, I've got Boston in 6.
I agree, Boston in 6. So, and we're still going to wait to see. Go ahead.
I think we can go back if we're calling Sacramento over Golden State, or even if Golden State advances. Again, that is tough to call, but let's just say, let's do some predictions. If it's Sacramento against the Lakers, and if it's Golden State against the Lakers.
If it's Sacramento against the Lakers, I think LA would
definitely. I feel like the Lakers definitely have a better shot.
Right? Yeah, I think Lakers would win that in 6. If it's Golden State and the Lakers, I feel like that goes the distance in 7.
I don't disagree with those. I think the Lakers are going to have an uphill battle against both. I think they make the Western Conference Finals if they're playing. I think they have a good chance to make the Western Conference Finals. They're playing Sacramento versus Golden State. I do not see them having any favorable matchups against the Golden State Warriors with their experience, with guard, you name it. I just think they're in trouble if they play Golden State. So I think the Lakers are going to be big Sacramento fans.
Yeah. All right, that is what I am talking about. But Evan, any last things? Hopefully, when the playoffs die down and they conclude, then we can actually fully talk about the bargaining agreement that has been signed and all that.
Yeah, what the offseason looks like.
I think, Martin, in this
next round, we will know
who the winner of the Wembanyama sweepstakes is, won't we?
Yeah. We'll.
It will take place. The NBA draft lottery is slated to take place Tuesday, May 16th. So we're coming up on May 1st tomorrow. So essentially 2 weeks from Tuesday, we will know the winner of arguably the hottest recruit since LeBron, essentially, in terms of opportunity, talent, and otherwise. So we'll see who threw their seasons for a cause, who's in deep trouble, and part of the Wembanyama experience in the NBA starts.
Yeah, that will be interesting. We never know how those ping pong balls are going to go. And enjoy the basketball, everyone. The second round probably going to be just as crazy as the first. So, with that being said, thank you everyone for listening to L7C Podcast. Remember, the second round of the NBA playoffs have already started. We will be back reviewing the second round and seeing how we did, and we'll be watching the games carefully. And with that being said, take care. Thank you for listening to this episode of the L7C Podcast. Be sure to like, rate, review, and subscribe to the channel. Follow us on all social media platforms, and we'll be talking to you guys soon. Take care.